Get the behind-the-scenes information on the breweries and beers you love with What's on Tap's Brewery Sessions. All right, welcome to What's on Tap, and we're taking a bit of a departure from our normal bar banter to join up at one of our favorite breweries in the Öresund region called Amager for their very special release today. They have a new New England IPA, which is called the
Bastard Princess, right?
And the
Double Black Mash.
Double Black Mash, which are two very exciting beers. And let's just go ahead and get you to introduce yourself. And
yes, hello. My name is Henrik Papsøe. My official title here at Amager Bryghus is I'm head of communications. But that was actually a bit of a joke because there's nobody to be boss for. There's only me in the communications department. But since I'm a journalist, this was my one chance in life to be head of anything. So I picked that title.
Congratulations. It's a great subtitle.
But basically, of course, I work with communications, doing our social media and stuff, but I also deal with our export, which is the main part of my job. But I also, of course, deal with the branding of our beers, come up with beer names and beer ideas, actually, and the whole branding about what kind of names and what ideas should we put into these beers. So that's sort of the more fun part of my job.
You guys have some great beer names.
Thank you.
I really always look forward to whatever you're going to come out with. I know the beer name is going to be a lot of fun. And then the label is always very interesting at the same time.
It's really intentional because, to be completely honest, I think there's way too many people in this business that take themselves way too seriously.
Yeah.
So we like to add a little fun, a little irony into the business. So it's really on purpose that we sort of have we try to build a reputation as the naughty boys from Amager. But if you look at us, we're just a bunch of middle-aged guys. Really, we're not naughty boys anymore. But that's the reputation we try to keep up. And also we really take the piss on many things, and we enjoy if we can take the piss on Systembolaget, of course. Some of our labels, when we tease them a little bit. I think we had 5 or 6 labels censored at Systembolaget, and we take it as a victory every time.
I can only imagine.
I think the one that gathered the most traction in social media was the Lust label, right?
That's correct. That's just after I started. We had what I since referred to as Lustgate, because actually it was just a lady. She was well proportioned, but there was no nipple showing or anything. Yeah. She was sitting in a bathtub with water covering her breast mainly. But at Systembolaget, they thought, that it would, combine with the text on the label, it would give the Swedes an idea that you can have sexual success if you drank this beer, which we all know, of course, to be true, but you cannot say that openly in Sweden.
That's very true. They don't want to admit anything the Danes provide any kind of pleasure in any way.
Absolutely. I think they have some lawyers specific, granting anything coming from Denmark with an extra strict sort of opinion, because Danes have this bad reputation in Sweden, So I think they have an extra strict look at anything coming from us, really. But Lustgate provided us with 31 stories and TV stories all over the world.
Nice.
Within a week, actually. So that was a great marketing success for us. And was such a simple story that even journalists could understand it, because, it was the big Swedish state, nanny state up against the little naughty Danish brewery, the big David against Goliath,
Yeah.
So it was an easy story to understand, and we got a lot of marketing on that, and sold a lot of Lust after that. It went from being sort of a pretty mediocre selling beer to being a well-known beer in our portfolio and selling pretty good.
Yeah.
So that was nice, yeah.
And the beer still to this day just has a black label in Sweden?
No, if we had to sell it again at Systembolaget, it had to have that.
Okay.
But if we just sell it to bars and restaurants in Sweden now, it's okay, Okay. But at Systembolaget, if we had to reintroduce it, it would have to have the blackened out label that is what ended up being the official Swedish label.
Yeah.
No boobies, only blackness.
Which is funny because some of your labels are quite, I don't say graphic, but they're kind of violent, violence implied.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that, of course, seems okay a little more than some sort of pseudo-sexual innuendo that you might have on the...
But I think, wasn't it Arctic Sunstone as well that got denied because the Viking had an axe in his hand or stuff like that?
The Viking has a sword in his hand. Yeah. And normally you're not allowed to show weapons on Swedish labels. But for some reason, we were allowed to keep the sword if we removed the blood from it. So that was sort of a compromise. But after Arctic Sunstone with a sword came Todd the Axeman with the axe, and there we had to remove the axe.
Oh, you had to change with the guitar, right?
It's sometimes a little difficult to find sort of, the red thread through everything because, from one beer to the other, they seem to change opinion about what's allowed or not. But as I said, we don't take it too seriously anymore. We just think it's fun, and then we find a solution. Just recently, we had a new beer declined at Systembolaget, or the label declined, the one called Psychedelic Popcorn.
Okay,
really?
Because they found that it encouraged people to do drugs. That's all they said, really. But our importer, he complained about it, and they actually changed their opinion.
Okay.
So they can change opinion if they are presented with good facts about what's behind the story or what's behind the name and all that. So it's not like they're totally rigid at all at Systembolaget.
No. So you can actually reason with them a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the beer now, but the one that was supposed to be released today that was a joint collaboration with the Polish brewery.
The Red Hetman.
Yes,
The Red Hetman.
the Red Hetman,
Do you foresee problems with that one coming out in Sweden? That was really, the label's really ribbing the Swedes pretty hard there.
The Swede Slayer. Yeah, it was fun writing that text. I think that a Swede who doesn't understand the humor in that labeling, he doesn't really deserve to drink the beer anyway, so we don't mind. But I think that the humor and the irony in the text is so funny that even the Swedes can laugh at it.
Oh yeah.
But the Swedish-Danish relationship is always sort of a love-hate relationship. I think it will continue forever. But especially to Amager, Sweden is extremely dear because you're so close and we do so many things in Sweden, and so many Swedes come over here and buy our beers, and we have a really good name in Sweden. So Amager is sort of Sweden is sort of our second home country, and we go there so many times every year. So we don't really think as Sweden as a a foreign country anymore. It's just the neighborhood, pretty much.
It's your home away from home.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about Double Black Mash, which is the main release today, right?
Right.
So what inspired you to make that beer?
It was actually a beer originally made for, I believe, it was the first Mikkeller Copenhagen beer celebration, where we wanted to do something really special and heavy, sort of our take on a Dark Lord, even if it's not Dark Lord, of course, but going in that direction, So it was only intended to be a one-off, actually, for that festival. But it ended up being so popular that we decided to make it a yearly occurrence to do the Double Black Mash. And that's why we also started doing putting vintages on the label. So people could sort of compare different vintages and perhaps do a vertical tasting of them when you had several years. It's a difficult beer because you can imagine being a double mash beer. It's almost guaranteed to give you stock mash. And if it happens, if the brewer happened to not have a stock mash, they come out almost triumphant, from the brew house saying, we did a batch of double black mash without any stock mash, but you can imagine a beer made from beer, it's so extremely rich in malts. And the thing about it is that it takes so long.
So how long is a brew day for the double black mash?
Yeah. Pretty much from 8 in the morning until 10 in the evening.
Oh wow,
That's intense.
And that's the thing about it. We do 2 batches every year of double black mash, and we could probably do 6 batches of other beers at the same time, So it's an expensive beer, not only by itself, but also it takes time off other beers that we could have made in the meantime, So that's also why we have limited it to 2 batches a year. But I can tell you a little secret that probably this year we might do another 2 batches because the US has ordered quite a bit of double black mash. So we might end up doing it. A lot of people have encouraged us to do a bourbon barrel version of it.
Well, you have a lot of barrels around this room. And
there's a lot of...
I'm not going to deny that a bourbon barrel version of black mash would be something quite spectacular.
Yeah, I would be all over that. That'd be amazing.
The problem about that idea, though, is that it's going to be so expensive that we cannot really charge the money that, the beer is going to cost. Because by itself, we charge the same for a double black mash as we do for other bourbon barrel or barrel-aged beers. And now you take that and add a bourbon barrel-aged on top of it. So we've decided not to do it, but perhaps one year, you never know, but it's going to be crazy expensive.
Sometime for a CBC,
maybe.
I guarantee you there is a market for it based on like the ridiculous beer prices that are out there these days.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure whatever you think it is, it's probably not as expensive as other people.
But we would feel so shameful to demand that kind of money, I don't think the Danish breweries really see that like the American breweries. They tend to have no shame, when they demand for their special releases at all. And the beer buyers, they dig into it. They still pay it, But the Danish beer market is pretty competitive, especially on keg beer. So for some reason, I think the bar owners would be more likely to pay an extreme amount of money for imported kegs than they would for a domestic one. Yeah.
That's kind of a shame.
It is it is a bit of a shame because that as I said, it prevents us from doing a bourbon barrel version of it.
All right, so all the bars here and in Scandinavia as well. You better be ready to pay up a little bit because we want to try that bourbon barrel double black mash.
Send them some requests that you're willing to pony up the money for that. That sounds awesome.
But we still have a lot of plans for bourbon barrel aged stuff this year. I can reveal that an old cult beer is coming back this year.
Ooh.
I don't know if you remember a beer called Murph Hill.
I haven't heard about that one. No.
It was our rye porter, if you ever had that, which is actually a recipe developed with Sean Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Sean and Mike Murphy now of Lervig coming here one day to do a bourbon barrel version of that rye porter.
Nice.
And that was released as probably about 8 years ago as Murph Hill, as Murph from Mike Murphy and Hill from Sean Hill.
Yeah.
And it has a photo of the two guys on the label.
That's awesome.
And that beer we're actually bringing back. So it's our rye porter, which is an 8.5 imperial rye porter that we are going to put on bourbon barrels. And it's a very... The old guys who have been with us from the start, they still talk about Murphyville as sort of a cult beer.
Wow.
And that's coming back this year.
Nice. I'm really excited to try that.
And because it's our 10th anniversary year, we're doing actually 6 anniversary beers.
Oh, wow.
The 3 brewers, Jacob, the head brewer, Renee, and Andreas, they have developed a recipe each. They're doing in a sort of clean version, a non-barrel aged version. And those are going to come out for release at the brewery here when we have our 10th anniversary event at April 8th.
April 8th? Yeah.
And also in a keg version at CBC, actually a little later. And then later on this year, we're going to do all of them again, now in a bourbon barrel aged version.
Nice.
So it's going to be for Jacob. He's doing he has this joke about, an Imperial Stout being the best pale ale in the world. So you can drink an Imperial Stout out of the bottle, and you can't see it on it. So he's doing another double mash Imperial Stout.
Okay.
Renee is doing what he calls a pale barley wine.
Oh, nice.
Single malt, single hop, single yeast. Very simple.
So it's kind of like wine. The Firestone Eldorado, which sounds like a
pretty much
white
the
wine.
same idea. I think I'm actually going to call it a pale barley wine.
Nice.
At least in the clean version, because on barrels, of course, it'll take some color.
It's going to grab something from yeah.
And Andreas is doing a very interesting beer, sort of a farmhouse old ale. These beers are all at least 10%.
Okay.
So Andreas is doing a stronger version of a traditional English old ale with a mixed yeast culture for primary fermentation, and then he's doing secondary fermentation with Brettanomyces clauseni.
Nice.
So it's gonna have a lot of bread notes. Right now it's on tank and it's very fruity, but when the bread kicks in, it's gonna get a lot of bread.
Yeah.
So that's kind of come. Those 3 beers are coming in their clean version, April 8th at the brewery for bottle release, and then later this year they're gonna come again with a different name in a bourbon barrel version.
That's some really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be some pretty popular heavy hitters. Yeah, definitely.
Nice. All right, and talking about events you're doing,
yes.
You also have the Americano Day.
Americano Day, yes.
Is that coming back this year?
Yes, of course it is, by popular demand. We think it's probably going to be our first event at our new location.
Okay.
As you may have heard, this is sort of a year of transition for us. We're moving from this old location where we've been since the start 10 years ago, and moving to a new location just 500 meters from Mikkela's warehouse at a place called Christina, which is an industrial estate 3 kilometers from here on the way to the airport. So we're going to pretty much be neighbors to the most busy runway, in the whole of Denmark. But it's going to be sort of a modern industrial building, as you know. Breweries in San Diego, most of them are also in industrial estates, even if they have names like Lost Abbey and all that. It's just really an industrial building where they're situated and all that. So we're looking forward to that because this old facility, we have sort of outgrown it. We cannot expand here anymore.
Yeah.
So we're moving to the new facility, hopefully midsummer. So we plan that Americano Day, where we release this year's American collaboration beers, will be the first event at the new location.
That's going to be
And it's
nice.
only 3 kilometers from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still very much Amager.
Yeah, and it's still easy to get to it from like public transportation and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's even a little bit closer to Sweden, actually.
Exactly.
All right.
I mean, the closer you get to Sweden, the better.
Exactly. Can you say some of the collaborations that are going to be for the day?
Yes. We did a collaboration earlier this year with Trillium.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the one called Sigtebrød.
Yeah.
It's named after an old Danish style of wheat bread.
Yeah.
We're twisting the name a little bit, call it Sigtebrød, So we have a girl cutting bread on the label. But it's basically the same beer, a New England style IPA like Trillium is so famous for doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're putting out pretty much a new IPA every 2 weeks or something like that. That's crazy. And we also did a collaboration, 2 collaborations in Kentucky. One with Against the Grain called Minor Accident, a double IPA. We're doing it that same beer here, and we did an India Pale Lager with a brewery called 8 Ball in Lexington, which is basically, even though it's in Kentucky, it's a suburb to Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah. So we're doing those 3 beers in our own version, and then we've just collaborated within the last couple of weeks with Pipeworks.
Oh, nice. I saw the post of that, yeah.
We made a beer called Piping Up for Peace, 4.5 session IPA.
Nice.
And then we're doing sort of a tropical India Pale Ale with Wicked Wheat. Mandarina Man, we call it. It's a Mandarina Mango IPA.
Yeah.
With puree from those fruits. And then next month we're doing probably our last collaboration with the American Breweries for this season with a very unknown brewery from Vermont.
Okay.
Called Hermit Thrush. It's sort of they're very much sort of alternative people, a bit like Fanta Flora, using local ingredients and all that. So we're trying to, if we can work together with combining some of their ingredients with ours. And they come from sort of a very liberal part of Vermont, with, what do you call handicrafts and all that. And the brewery is sort of part of that.
You can just stop by saying they're from Vermont.
Yeah.
Very liberal is implied. I mean, yeah.
And they wrote to us because they had 2 female brewers traveling in Europe. They wanted to visit some breweries and learn a little bit about how we're doing things. And we talked to them and said, well, if you come visit, why don't we set our collaboration? So right now, our head brewer, Jacob, is talking to their head brewer, even though he's not coming.
Yeah.
It's going to be the 2 female brewers coming. So we hope to work something interesting out with them, like we did with Forest and Main, which was completely unknown brewery to most people. And I think the psychedelic popcorn was actually one of our most interesting beers last year because it was so different from what we're used to doing or people are used to associating with Amager, which is hoppy beers and heavy imperial stouts. And this was sort of a really clean grisette, very downplayed, very, very drinkable. So I hope we can come out with something that is very different from what people expect from Amager, with a Vermont brewery.
Yeah. It's also fun to bring in some lesser known breweries.
Exactly.
And see what they have to bring to the table as well.
Yeah, because working with Forest and Main, was a bit of a shock from Morten and Jacob because, that brewery is so low key, and they thought, it's not possible, to find a brewery with a less developed standard than our first brew house, from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But here it was, because they pretty much put everything together themselves from bits and pieces and all that. And, they had a pump, usually you have wheels under your pump. They had a skateboard under the pump, an old skateboard, But they had an amazing, funny brew day, and these people was just so incredibly nice, and they gave us their local yeast strain home that we've been using in psychedelic popcorn.
Nice.
So it ended up being a really interesting beer that came out of that effort, which we have problems with in the US, by the way, because they also associate psychedelic with doing drugs. So we may be changing it to psychotronic popcorn in the US, see if that passes,
Yeah, the label inspection in the U.S. is actually quite harsh as well, right? From what I've heard.
Yeah. They used to have one guy doing all labels, but he retired.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he retired a couple of years ago. He had I thought he was called the Colonel or something.
Yeah, it was something like that.
An old officer or something like that. But he overlooked all labels in the U.S., so he had his own little ways, but he was pretty reasonable. But now things have changed and they have many different people doing it, and it's a bit tough,
Yeah.
We had what was it called? The lubricated Labrador. We had turned down in the U.S.
It had a Star Wars reference, right? Before
no,
the old name.
Yeah, that was lubricated Ewok.
Yeah.
When we put that out on bottle, I thought it was probably best not to mention an Ewok. So it became a lubricated Labrador, but the U.S. simply could not. I think the censorship people could not find out about my totally fictional story about this survey documenting what kind of dog breeds prefers different kinds of beers, and then they had this graphic illustration of a Labrador having double IPA injected straight into the brain, and I don't know if they fear that people would start serving double IPA for dogs or injecting into their brains if they release this beer. I don't know, but it means it's only going to come out on kegs in the US, and there's not going to be any bottles.
Which states do you distribute to in the US?
What states? Mm-hmm. Actually, I have to say I don't know, but I think it's about 30 states. Because it's through our importer, Shelton, and I'm not totally sure. And it also changes a bit because, there's always distribution problems in the US, and there's quarrels and, court cases between importers and distributors all the time. So some states go in and out of distribution. But an interesting market for us that just opened up is Texas, which is a huge market.
Which is,
actually, I lived in Texas for 11 years, and I was actually talking with some friends that lived there about Amager, and saying they should really try to track some down. I've seen some of the shelves, but it was only the Prairie collab that I've seen on the shelves there. So,
but last year we Shelton opened up for us to start having our beers distributed in Texas.
Nice.
And it's mainly really the big guns. The Texans seem to like the really huge beers.
Yeah. It's a big beer state. I mean, they're all about the big boldness of everything.
Everything is big in Texas.
It's huge. Crazy there.
Yeah.
All right. So any other news you want to?
It's going to be a big year for
Amager. You guys have like a lot of stuff going on this year. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, there might be one thing I'd like to sort of finish with is because some people say, now you're moving to a new location. What are your plans, for expansion, all that? Because usually when a brewery moves location, they say, well, we have a plan, about, conquering the world within the next 6 months or, tripling, our exports or whatever. And we don't have any plans, We just want to have a better location to be able to grow organically as we've grown for 10 years. Slowly, we don't want any investors from the outside. We still want to be strictly independent. Amager could probably have been a lot bigger than we are right now if we had a huge investor. But we want to be able to still decide, what we want to do and do what we feel is fun and do what we like. There's a lot of people asking us, why don't you do any wheat beer, for instance, and we said, we fucking hate wheat beer, so why should we do it?
There's other people doing that shit. We don't have to do it.
Exactly. And like Morten and Jacob, the owners and founders, say, we would hate, sitting at a board meeting with somebody who's just in it for the money and has no understanding for the industry or any love for beer whatsoever. So we want to stay strictly independent, and we just want to keep growing slowly and not doing any big moves. We're in 30 countries right now all over the world, which is quite unusual for such a small brewery. But it's good for us because the Danish market is extremely competitive with many breweries in a very small country.
Well, I mean, you've got three breweries on the Rate Beer's best breweries in the world, top 100 in the world. Yeah. So, I mean, you're in amazing company there. I mean,
it is. And we're still amazed every year that we continue to. We've been there, 8 consecutive years now on the top 100.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we're still amazed, because there's so many new amazing breweries, coming up, especially in the US, but also in Britain and God knows where. I mean, there's a lot of great breweries in Poland, these days and all that. So we're still amazed that we managed, to stay on that list and that we're able actually to export our beers to the US, which is our biggest export market, because there's so many breweries in the US right now. So it's amazing that we can still find our little niche of people wanting to buy Amager beers.
Yeah.
But I just talked to Walt Dickinson from Wicked Wheat 2 weeks ago when he was here brewing, and I said, do you see a downfall in the US? And he said, we're starting to see it. And he said, those breweries, those craft breweries that have grown big and expanded with another plant, like Sierra Nevada and stuff like they're going down now. He says, and he said he was sort of foreseeing that they might get in trouble because they have huge investments in new production plants, in different states and all that. But there's just so much competition about the tap handles because there's so many.
Well, I mean, we saw Stone hit a huge problem when they expanded into Berlin and then had a huge cut in staff because they just didn't have the demand like they were expecting to have.
No,
it's getting so competitive, and then you're seeing AB InBev going in and buying up a lot of your kind of mid-range breweries. So, yeah, I mean it's extremely competitive out there.
I think the beer market is going to be really interesting for the coming years, because something is bound to happen. I think.
But do you see AB InBev or maybe a Carlsberg or someone kind of doing that same expansion here in Europe, where they're buying up, breweries about your size or a little bigger that have a definite footprint in the world market? Because I mean, right now they've been really focusing on the U.S. and they haven't really seen that kind of monopolization here yet.
Yeah, no, that's true. They did buy up what's it called? One brewery in London, didn't they? What's it called? A couple of years ago.
Was it Camden?
Camden.
Yeah.
Camden.
Camden.
Yeah. I don't know. We haven't really seen AB InBev buying up much in Europe apart from that. About Carlsberg, they are struggling with their traditional market still, and I think they came out with a pretty bad result this year. So they might, also start finding out if a path to continued growth is actually getting into the craft beer world by acquiring breweries. We sometimes joke about, there's perhaps a bigger reason why Mikkeller has moved into the old Carlsberg town, with their new head office, it's just the first step and all that. But I don't know. I have no ideas about that.
Yeah.
But I think Carlsberg has to do something, otherwise they're getting in trouble because they're too small to compete with the really big guys in the industry, even though they're the fifth or fourth biggest player.
There's a big jump between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
I mean, Carlsberg is pretty small now by world standards.
Yeah.
But I think they have to do something, and I think they're probably going to. The second biggest producer in Denmark, Royal Unibrew, has created these fake craft beers. They've created a couple of brands, that sell for 10, 12 Danish kroner in the stores, And
we're seeing the same in Sweden as well. How Spendrups is doing it. There's a couple of other
Brutal Brewing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And people are embracing it because if you're not really into the industry, you don't understand that this is not really craft beer.
You've just heard that, craft beer is supposed to be better, and this looks like a smaller brand. There's some fun labels going on.
Yeah.
It's like a hand-drawn label, so therefore it's got to be good.
Exactly.
Yeah. The same thing might happen in Scandinavia as happened in the US, where the big guys sort of found out that we're not very good at brewing craft beer, so they instead started to buy the actual craft beer breweries. I was at Goose Island earlier this year and talked to the head of innovation, and he said we really enjoy it because what happened at Goose Island is that they moved out our wheat beer to a brewery in New York State, and it was like 55% of our production we were doing this boring wheat beer.
So
and they moved that out. So now we can concentrate on innovation, the really interesting beers that we like to do, So they really enjoyed it,
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. What was it? Great Divide in Colorado had the same kind of thing where it's like the workaday stuff that we just have to produce to keep the lights on that's not very exciting. Yeah. They take that over and they mass produce it and they get our names out, and then we do the fun stuff and the innovation that we enjoy. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like in the old day when like A.B. Miller would go in and just buy up stuff and then shut it down because it was direct competition or just bad mismanagement.
So at Goose Island, they said to me, our production actually went down, but it's sort of at a higher level, and we get more credit for what we're doing now because it's all interesting beers we're doing.
Yeah.
But my fear with the big guys taking all craft breweries is always that they always say we keep them strictly independent. We're not going to mess with anything. But when another generation of board members take over, 10 years from now, they might have forgotten, the promises given and all that.
Yeah.
And they still own this company, so they could do whatever they want to it, So I don't know, but I fear, that these breweries that are taken over by some of the big guys slowly are declining in quality because there's too many compromises being made by the money guys in the board meetings, That's just my opinion, but that's what I fear, when the big guys take over a craft brewery.
Yeah, I can completely see that happening because in 20 years, if suddenly Goose Island isn't as niche or as popular as it used to be, then what's the point of keeping the brand around? I mean, you can easily liquidate it and move on to something else.
Because in that kind of industry, on that kind of level, liquidation is just doing it like that. It's just a decision being made at a board meeting, and then it's gone,
And then it's all basically just money purposed.
Pretty much, But hopefully, the guys who created the brand and they got a good pay for it.
Sure they did.
They got something out of it. But it's still sad. If you see established brands go because somebody decided it. Right?
Just it wasn't profitable enough.
No, but you still have to see what's going to happen. This business is so interesting because there's so many things going on at all times. And
I think there's still a lot of opportunities all over. Well, basically in Eastern Europe, probably. You mentioned Poland.
Yes, and also the Far East, actually.
Yeah.
Because the Asians are really getting into craft
China.
China's getting into it.
It's a huge market to be
but we're selling beers in Thailand, in Singapore, in Malaysia. Malaysia being a Muslim country. It's kind of weird. And Hong Kong and China, as mentioned. So I think there's a lot of people down there. First they got when they started making money, they got a good cell phone. Now they want good beer as well.
Yeah. I mean, China is isn't China the biggest country in beer consumption?
I think it is, right? From the
beer and wine
consumption.
Beer and wine consumption.
Yeah, wine. It's
crazy
locally
about
made
that.
wine. And they used to be Chinese beer used to be 3.5 pale lager made basically from rice. Completely tasteless, but. I think
as soon as their eyes are opening up to the craft beer market, then that's going to be a massive market share.
I mean, it's starting, and you're starting. When I was there, the first time I went there, like 4 years ago, I mean, you didn't really have anything, and then I went back 2 years later to Shanghai, and then suddenly you had Boxing Cat, and you had like a couple of smaller things, and now there's like 6 or 7 different craft beer bars, and there's a store specializing, and I mean, you've got 10, 12 places you can go now to find craft beer.
Yeah.
So it's developing really, really quickly.
It's really happening. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And we also selling beer to China, even though, and we're not compromising our prices anywhere on the world market, So it's pretty expensive beer. But it's not like we're not selling beer by the container. We're selling like 3 or 4 pallets at a time, So it's not, it's not going to make us fat or anything, but it's an interesting market to get into, definitely.
And I think it's probably a great point in time to be sending pallets for now. But I mean, in the future and with your expansion and everything, as soon as people start getting their eyes up for craft beer in China as well, then maybe it's going to start being like container-wise instead.
Yeah. And again, I think we might have sort of a good position because we are a different design, and I think our graphic illustration might appeal to a curious new Chinese craft
especially
beer drinker,
like the Gluttony series or the Seven
Sinners
series. Very cartoony, and you guys have a lot of cartoony advertising, which really appeals to the Asian markets.
Yeah. Speaking of which, have you heard there's a theme beer bar opening up in Malmö called the 7 Deadly Sins?
No, I haven't heard about that.
No, it's opening up in March.
Ooh.
With 30 taps.
Wow. So I guess your Sinner series should be...
They would like to, if possible, to keep our Sinner series on tap at all times. But we're not able to do that, so part of it might be in bottles. But apparently they're going to sort of make themed areas of the bar from our Sinner series illustrations and
Nice.
all that. So,
Do you know where this is going to be, or?
It's not on the main drag. Benny, our importer, said. I'm not exactly sure of the location now, but it's really an interesting idea.
Seven Deadly Sins.
Yeah, I think that's what it's gonna be called.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's going to be awesome.
We'll have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
In March, so it should be really, really soon.
Well, that's going to have to
Surprised we
be
haven't heard about it.
one of our podcasts over there to review the
We
place
will
when it
soon.
opens.
Yeah. Keep that
I
in
have a
mind.
name on the guy. I don't remember it now, but I can send it to you.
Yeah, for sure.
So you can dig further into
Yeah,
it.
yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good. And then we can
Right,
do
let's-
an episode
let's
over there.
Wrap it up there, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much.
You're more than welcome. It was a
And,
pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
visiting us.
Thank you for
We
having us
wouldn't miss
over. Oh, definitely. Yeah. We'll be back for many more occasions for sure.
Well, we're going to be back for the Amager Counter Day at the
Yeah.
new place, and I mean the
birthday.
10th anniversary as
Yeah.
well.
Great. You're
gonna be
always
some
welcome.
awesome stuff.
As long as you bring beer.
Of course, I always got something for you, man.
You got some great beers. Yes, really,
Thanks, dude.
Really experimenting. Yeah,
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. I hope you can take it a level up, you know.
Yeah. We're hoping to we're hoping to have a contract brewing facility quite soon.
Right.
So hopefully that's going to work out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Henrik.
You're more than welcome.